If there is no deliverable or outcome yet, look for behaviors. If people ask for help, offer help, take risks, praise these behaviors, and then make sure team understands that this behavior is very welcome and it's constructive. And then if there is neither outcome nor behavior, look harder. There is always something to praise. By the way, there is a Chinese company that has AI CEO. NetDrug is the name of the company. Some tasks which no CEO will do, but it's issued like 500,000 project notifications, for deliverables, being late and so on, and coach employees 40,000 hours and so on.
While we are on the remote work and remote teams, project management, we often learn that osmotic communication, which means that when you are in that area, in the same building and the team is around, you learn a lot of things from your team members, knowingly or unknowingly. We overhear a few things, details of the projects and all. So how do you handle those types of communication or situations where team members could learn when they are in the same periphery? Right? Today, I'm joined by one of the top voices on LinkedIn, Peter Ivanov. Peter is a keynote speaker, an Amazon top 3 authors, and he empowers leaders to build hybrid power teams where humans and AI deliver top results. Hello and welcome to PMP with Prachi, the podcast dedicated to helping you master your project management and transition from a manager to a project leader. As a project and program managers, we often talk about the heavy lifting we do for our organizations, keeping the budget in check, the stakeholders happy, and the deadlines met. My guest today takes that metaphor quite literally. Peter Ivanov is a world senior champion in discuss, but when he isn't throwing the heavy objects in the stadium, he's helping some of the world's biggest companies solve much more complex problems. That is, how do you lead a high-performing team when you are staring at them through a computer screen? Peter is the author of Virtual Power Teams, and he's been at the forefront of this long before the remote work was even a buzzword. But what I love about Peter's approach is that it isn't just about Jira boards and status reports. It's about the invisible gravity that holds a team together. Today, we are going to get into the messy human side of the job. Whether you are starting just starting your project management journey, or a portfolio manager overseeing a global empire, this conversation is going to give you a whole new perspective on the human side of the PMO. Peter, I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, Prachi. Equally very excited and looking forward.
I'm honored to have you, Peter. So why don't we kick off by starting with your background, and why don't you tell us something about yourself, which I couldn't find it on LinkedIn?
Well, you mentioned in the intro that I have quite a various paths in my 55-year-old journey so far. So I was a mathematician, in love with mathematics. I'm a master of mathematics, studied 5 years in Sofia University, Bulgaria. Then I switched to IT. Somehow I wanted to deal with people, but IT not as a programmer. I was a data analyst, later on IT manager. So leading IT teams and introducing digital technologies. And then age 40, probably midlife crisis, I started sports again. I never stopped, but competitive sports. So I became 2017 world champion in discus throw. And now for 2 years, I jumped on the AI kind of wagon, being a mathematician, a senior IT manager, and for 10 years, like thought leader with a book translated in 6 languages. AI come in the middle, the algorithms, the technology, and then embedding it or diffusing AI, how they call it now, the embracement and adoption of AI. So yeah, that's a bit of, if I say Renaissance type, is like self-praising, but I tried different part of to kind of express myself in more body physical part, in more emotional part. Now I play guitar again. Now that kids are bigger. I have 5 daughters, by the way. I have a bit more time in the morning. So
Wow.
yeah, trying to do many things, but I guess with AI, which is the age of creating, being a builder and creator, it can bring you many intelligence and can plan and reason. And if you have great ideas and could articulate it well and provide feedback, you could create many things. So I guess my different backgrounds in sports, art, management, mathematics, and so on might be helpful to create a few things.
Hmm. We will dive deeper into your mathematics and all of your topics like the book and the um, the champion this about everything. So, and you also have written the book in 6 different languages. That's fascinating.
No, just to be, I wrote it in English and then it's been translated by the publisher. I did not do translation myself. But the
Okay.
topic is kind of international and global, and the fact that different, countries and publishers decided to translate it is, for me, flattering. But the best is that people like it. It's pragmatic and it's a story. That's why people read it till the end. The story unfolds. The Bernd struggles. In the end, the team is powerful, and they actually, after the earthquake in the Himalayas, they built resilient houses in the outskirts of Himalaya. But there is a lot of leadership lessons on the way and a lot of emotions in this small global team who is actually making a breakthrough.
And in fact, it was out like quite on time, like when pandemic hit and your book was out. So it was quite relevant, and it is still relevant. It's going to be relevant at least for a few years now, because now the globe teams and everything is becoming global, right? So very relevant book. So I mentioned about your world champion in this in the bio. My audience, who are all project, program, and portfolio managers, we often feel we are throwing a heavy weight every single day, just to keep the projects on track. In sports, you train for years for a throw that just lasts for few seconds. In our world, we are in 2-year marathon. So, how do you take that elite athlete's discipline and inject it into a team that's stuck in a messy middle of the long-term program or projects?
Yes. No, that's a great question. That's a great question. And just before I answer, throwing is interesting because it is highly technical. People don't believe, the strengths matter for sure because discus is 2 kilograms. It's heavy, but technique decides, much kind of less stronger person can throw it much farther with the right technique. And then every error counts. You have like few seconds to execute this rotational movement and throw it, and every tiny little error in body positioning, weight distribution, if the arm is a little bit too fast, it should be first the legs and then the kind of arm should be in the end just to finish it. So it is highly technical, and therefore you need to prepare very methodically with mental training and multiple repetitions, throwing, but also imitations and so on. It has its specifics. But what it has to do with project management, maybe the metaphor is projects that you have to do meticulous planning, and the errors are business critical. So how can you prepare for those, and you have mitigation plans and so on? That could be one aspect, but the other aspect is it is quite heavy. You lift in the preparation very heavy weights, which is not always fun. You get injured. So ability to be disciplined is key in order to go through the training process and in the end develop the mental stability to do less errors, to be able to focus, to kind of not be influenced by the audience or any other circumstances. And in my daily life as a project manager, but also as a speaker and entrepreneur, the key thing I think which I developed in sports and I'm utilizing is discipline. So start with the scariest task that you have on your to-do list, something that you feel uncomfortable, head on first. Just have the discipline to just start with it. And then after a few seconds, minutes, you come into flow. Even if you struggle, I think that's probably the most important lesson, to start with the most difficult task that you have for the day and have the discipline to just do it. And then when you start, creativity comes into play. Now with the AI, we can get some extra advice and so on. So first is discipline, and start with the scariest task. There is for sure a principle like eat the frog, or it has different name. Start with the ugliest, scariest task, and then your productivity is unleashed. Once you tackle this one, you have much more self-confidence and motivation to tackle the rest. In terms of team, when that's like individual productivity, all these imitations that I mentioned and working with a coach is about feedback, because it is highly complex there and projects are much more complex, and you may lose direction, or you need from the team, from different experts and different perspective, constant feedback. So ability to listen to feedback is key. You should seek for feedback, and for the project managers in the audience, you have to institutionalize this team feedback on your project team. Because things like start, stop, continue doing, they call it, the full name is Starfish. You have like 5 questions and team provide answers, and you could do it on a regular basis. I do it just with 3 questions, start, stop, continue doing. Like every team member is sitting on a hot chair. People prepare in advance, put in writing on a card what you continue doing, something that is good and I appreciate. Stop doing something that maybe either is a blind spot, or you do it with good intentions but does not actually help. And the third one is start doing something that maybe you can go out of the comfort zone, you have the capability, it will help the team. So if you do this on a regular basis, it will address, first of all, it creates a lot of psychological safety and team spirit and bonding. And second, unleashes a lot of, the blind spots get exposed in a constructive way, encouragement to do things. It is very good. And if people, for example, don't go in the discipline approach and, avoid the scariest task in the team, some do it, some not, which impacts the performance of the team, this kind of feedback can flash those issues and resolve them. So in the end, the whole team will be more bolder, more disciplined, and tackle it. I think that's, and the other thing is about rituals. It has to do with this scariest eat the frog principle. If you develop some rituals, like starting with the most difficult task, try to bundle your emails like in 2-3 windows. Don't do constantly, because context switching is reducing productivity and is draining energy. So if you develop kind of supporting, nurturing rituals, then yes, you could be very successful. With the same level of energy, you could achieve more, and you could have the team united.
Mm-hmm. I love that you mentioned about start, stop, or continue doing. So that's a lovely start. And even in project management terms, when we study the PMBOK, we always study that start with the most difficult task first, not the easiest.
Yes.
So I'm on with you on that. So you talk a lot about remote teams and works. So for the remote leaders listening, how can they act as an information radiator for their team's success without it feeling like they are just bragging to their bosses? And how do we make those wins visible to them?
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm very big on this one in terms of praising. Bragging is if you kind of don't have any opportunity to kind of, you have to praise yourself. It's too late and not productive. So as a father of 5 kids, I've tried, if you have to deliver constructive feedback and maybe improvement feedback, criticism. I've tried with the best practices from Harvard and miserably failed. So what worked much better is praise, praise, praise. And same applies for teams, same applies for project teams. If there is already outcome deliverable, which is valuable, praise the deliverable. Make sure, you send a short email, maybe copy everyone or put it in the team chat. Praise the outcome. If there is no deliverable or outcome yet, look for behaviors. If people ask for help, offer help, take risks, praise these behaviors. And then make sure team understands that this behavior is very welcome and it's constructive. And then if there is neither outcome nor behavior, look harder. There is always something to praise. So in this case, if you as a leader provide the space for people to get appreciation, praise from yourself, praise from the others, they don't have to brag. And this would unleash a lot of productivity. And then you could do it on, this applies for good things and praising. Same applies because we do mistakes, and it's a big risk in a project if, the mistakes try to be swept under the carpet. If there is a lot of criticism, shaming, and blaming, that would be the natural behavior. But if you provide space also for people to kind of celebrate mistakes, and we do it with my partner, business partner, Kimberly Wiffling. We had a number of programs. She is in Silicon Valley, and maybe some of the project managers know her because she had spoke on many conferences.
Yeah.
We celebrate in our trainings the mistakes. If somebody make a mistake, hey, I made a mistake, or, you publicly jump and laugh, and on the contrary. And she even says, you have to do at least 3 mistakes to pass the program. Otherwise, you will not pass. So if you turn the mistakes in a way of make them not something to shame and blame, but to celebrate. If you have equally meetings where people in turn can be praised for their contribution or, express gratefulness. And on the other hand, have meetings that people can share failures and mistakes and turn it into a learning opportunity. This is what I did. That was the assumptions. That's what we learned from it. So it makes completely different culture. Instead of kind of blaming, it's much more, if you say fault tolerance, sound quite abstract. But if you have forums to praise, and you as a leader with your behavior, look proactively and recognize and appreciate and praise, and then turn the mistakes into learning opportunities and opportunity to celebrate and have fun, it's completely different atmosphere in any team, also in project teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but that is about the team. How do you put that in front of your leaders?
This one is for sure is much easier if the leader is open and he initiate this himself or herself, with a forum, usually not only one-to-one. It's good to have a forum when everyone can in turn, get some praise and maybe share some mistakes. It's very important, everyone, because Google Project Aristotle, they analyzed and researched the top performing teams, and they discovered that one characteristic that the best team have in common is psychological safety. And then one of the other things, which was like 95% plus, is in the high-performing teams, people have equal share of talking. So in these forums, it's good to, even if people are not used to, and some are much more introverted, you kind of institutionalize and everyone is having a say and, somebody moderates. But now back to your question, how do you do it with your boss? I think it's clear that you as a senior manager and project manager have clear goals to your, project board, your functional manager and line manager in your organization. And you negotiate with him a regular reporting meetings, like a monthly meeting where you give a short report. What have you achieved? What stays in your way? What support do you need from him and others? And in this meeting, just going through your achievements and the challenges you overcome, it's already a way to kind of get recognition in a structured way. And maybe few people really reach out because boss is very busy, but you can demand this and demand it. That's, some of his responsibilities to have kind of the periodicality and the regularity may change. Monthly is a good, depending how hands-on and integrated you work with your boss. Maybe daily is even required, but there should be a forum where you have sufficient time to go through progress. And then even if you say nothing, it will be obvious what have you achieved and what challenges you overcome.
Yeah. And while we are on the remote work and remote teams, project management, we often learn that osmotic communication, which means that when you are in that uh, area, in the same building, and the team is around, you learn a lot of things from your team members, knowingly or unknowingly. We overhear a few things, details of the projects and all. So, how do you handle those types of communication or situations where team members could learn when they are in the same periphery?
And if you give enough recognition, this will become also part of their goals. Apart from the project goals and deliverables and work stream, they may have some enabling role sometimes. And work in a strange or exotic locations. So gamification is cool, but it should be positioned well. Let people be creative. If you do that and people commit publicly, then they hold each other peer accountable.
How do they handle a team where one person wants to argue openly and another thinks that it's a total sign of disrespect?
And
How do you build high performing teams in this era of AI?